Welcome back to the Innovative Agency, everybody. Sharon Toerek here with you again today. And it's a happy day for Sharon, I have to tell you. I don't refer to myself in the third party very often, but um, I'm always happy when I get to have a conversation about helping agencies protect what I think is their most important inventory, capital, whatever you'd want to call it. Next to your people, it's the intellectual capital you create every day. It's your ideas, it's your ability to create concepts that help your clients further their businesses faster. And I have never been shy about the fact that I think agencies should own this a little bit more and a little bit better. And so, Brett, I am so excited to have you here, Brett Banker from X and O, to talk about um, how your path has brought you to a business model in your current business, which is sort of a hybrid agency consultancy, I guess is how I would describe it. Um, that does just that. You are all about bringing the strong idea to your clients and to your prospects. So thank you so much for joining me today to have this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I have a lot to say on the matter. We joke that X and O is it's as if an agency and a consultancy had a baby. So we do sit kind of right in between those two entities, and probably more like a consultancy, but certainly a lot of the output that we deliver is very agency-like in form.
I guess the first thing I want to know is what helped you drink this Kool-Aid as a former agency, pure agency guy. I'm sure having had your fair share of experiences where agencies for whom you ideated had a hard time on it, figuring out the best way to monetize what you were selling to potential clients. How did you sort of develop the bravery to decide this is the model we're going to build this time, and we're going to talk about the big idea and the value of the big idea with the client, not about the execution, which I know we'll talk about,
Yep.
which is where most agencies focus on making their money or trying to anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's a confluence of reasons and insights and even trends that led us and me to this model. I think the first was I never felt like the time-based model was right. And working at previous agencies that did it, and then moving to Anomaly that didn't do it, showed me a bit of the way of putting the value on the output and not on the time and the people it takes to get to it. And
Mhm.
that always felt really right to me when I got to Anomaly, but even that was still built on a bigger agency. And I also felt like you could get to those answers a lot quicker. And the AOR model is fraught for many reasons. And one is overloaded teams, a lot of juniors, mids, and seniors, and you get less time today than ever of the expert thinking and the expert talent. And as we got into the pandemic, more and more people started working from home, divorcing themselves from bigger corporate companies, and realizing that after 2.5 decades or more of doing something well and having put your 10,000 hours in, that they could do it on their own. So we had access to a different type of talent as well that could allow us to move at a really fast pace to deliver ideas. And then the last thing was, we wanted to make it easy for clients to own the ideas. It was this like white knuckle grip that a lot of agencies have around the idea that it's ours. And I need to ring fence it from brief concept, the first time that idea is brought into the world and birthed at a concept level, to like, I have to go make it because it's mine. And we just know the trend is not moving that way. Clients are bringing great talent in-house. And the thing I found they can duplicate the quickest is the making. They can get good makers and people that can produce the work.
Mhm.
So like, why not swim towards that versus continue to fight against it? So what we did is just we basically decoupled vision from execution. That doesn't mean we won't execute for a client, but that's not really where the value is. Where they're usually have the biggest gap is the really exceptional expert upstream thinking, whether it's business strategy, positioning and brand strategy, or the actual creative idea. That's what they need from agencies. And the thought for X&O is let's deliver that with pace, with concentrated time from experts that have done it over and over again. And let's just release that white knuckle grip and go, clients, you own it. From the minute we give it to you, you own it. But we don't pitch. We don't give anything away for free because
Mhm.
you're going to get that in 2 or 3 weeks from great talent. And then if you want us to lean in and take that to the next stage at a stage 2 or 3 or 4, we can. But we are going to make sure clients pay for the value of that IP, which is what you open with. Like that is where that truly is the currency. And unfortunately, in too many cases, agencies are giving that away for free, and then they're clawing it back in execution. And that
Yeah.
just feels like a really fraught model.
Amen to that. So for the agency owners and leaders who are listening, I really want to have the conversation with you in a moment about how you built that muscle to talk about your value in your work that way with
Mhm.
prospects and with clients. But let's take a step back for a second. Talk a little bit about your model and how it's different. I know you work in sprints.
Yep.
But you're also really specific about how you define the sprints up front to your clients and your potential. So,
Yep.
um,
So probably a couple of key differentiators. One is the people. So it's only C-suite and expert level talent. So I have a lot of really talented people reach out to me and say, I'd love to be in your network. And they're 5 years in more traditional creative strategy, business strategy. And we're totally bought in the 10,000 hours principle. And you need to have done it over and over again to really be an expert. And
right.
that allows our people, they just have a different level of experience, taste, gut, so they can move really fast. The others, they are 100% dedicated when they are on a project of ours, if not very close to that, which, if you work with an agency, you might pitch to, when we were in our old agency world, Eric and myself, and you like us and the other C-suite level folks in the room. But every client knows full well once they sign on the dotted line that what was maybe getting half of our time in that 2 week, 3, 4 week pitch will quickly turn into 10% or 5% because we're spread across way
Right.
too much.
Right.
And all agency leaders will say that. The better you are and the more senior you get, the more removed you get from solving day-to-day client problems. So we
Mhm.
wanted to harness that. Almost like you'll hear a lot of agencies say, why are we so good in a pitch? You're so good because the time is finite, it's quick, you have attention of senior and experienced leaders, and you're being very decisive in those moments to get to quick output and great output quickly. So we were
Mhm.
like, let's bottle that and just do that over and over and over again. And then I'd say the last thing is we did something that's could be perceived as heretical, which is what you opened with. We productized output. We went, a lot of agencies will go, you can't create a product. It's the creative process is fluid and it takes time. And you've got to put the proper time into problem definition and strategy development and concept creation. And then the second step of creation, which is codifying that into a toolkit to go get made.
Right.
And we went, nah, that's not true. You can do that in weeks as long as you have the right senior folks that can get there quickly. The problem definition is clear. We work top to top. So we also have removed all hierarchy. You're going to work directly with myself and Eric and our experts, which are very, very senior. And then we
Mhm.
ask that in return. We say to clients, you probably have a great team of 10. We don't want to work through levels. We're not going to do that. We're going to work direct to the top. The whole team can be there, but that makes for more fluid and quick decision making. And then by productizing it, we went small, medium, large. A small, very clear. You need 7-ish ideas in 7 days. They could be strategic, creative. The brief is clear. Doesn't need a lot of strategic development. It's just like sprint towards ideas and development. And then a medium is more strategic rigor, maybe bigger output on the other end, whether that's innovation or creative platform. It's something that's going to come out on the other side that is probably has more long-term impact. And
Right.
then a large is more of a 2 or 3 phases. It might be, I need positioning, creative platforming, comm strategy, or like a plan for how that rolls out in detail. And we'll do all 3 of those phases in 7 to 8 weeks. But
Mhm.
the interesting bit is typically at an agency, every one of those would be, 3 to 5 times longer in their process, in the amount of people that would touch it. And therefore it's instead of getting that medium in 3 to 4 weeks, that's typically 3 months. Um,
Right.
we're able to sprint because we're clearly laying out in each of those small, medium, larges what you're getting. The operation is lacking hierarchy, so we can move really fast. And then it's the expert level talent. Like those are the key differentiators.
Well, and you're unconstrained about having to think through the financial dynamics of executing, right?
Correct.
Because
Yep.
You can choose to be involved in that or not involved in that.
Yep.
And you can choose the margin that you need to achieve for the price of being involved in that. Um,
We're also not, that's never the end goal for us,
yeah.
which is totally different from a small, medium, large agency,
Yes.
right? They
Yeah.
are open and willing to pitch for free or to give ideas away for free because they have to claw it back in execution. So that white knuckle grip that they put around the idea is almost, it's driven as much by the hubris that no one can make the idea better than I can. So I have to go make it. The
Yeah.
client can't, or another agency can't, because we'll make it better, which is fraught. I don't think that's true. But also their business model dictates it because they have to make the money over there. Whereas we don't. You know, we are going to ensure that we get paid up front for the vision setting, whether that's strategic or creative. And there's no motivation to like, well, we have to ensure we get the next thing. We don't. Like, as long as we're paid well and for fair value for the IP up front, strategic and creative, then it frees up the relationship a little bit because we're not fighting for the next phase. We don't have to have it. Now, if a client feels like we are best suited to do step 2 or step 3, and we feel like it's in our best interest, whether do we have the right people to service that? Is our model set up to deliver that? Then we'll take it to an execution phase if it's in the best interest of both parties. But it's not a mandate, and it's both from the business model to our belief of the idea needs it. Like, you need us to do it.
Right.
We've come to a really comfortable place to say we can hand it over to you, and it may not come out the other end the way we would have envisioned it, in execution, but that's okay. Like,
Mhm.
we don't have the ego to say it has to be us.
Right. Talk a little bit about, as a former small and larger agency person,
Yeah.
the mindset shift that the owner of an agency has to make or go through so that they can develop the muscle they need to actually go out there and share this message with prospective clients. Because, to my view, and based on what I've seen and years of counseling agencies on IP and on contract negotiations, this is a confidence thing, and it's not a personal confidence thing. It's a confidence in the potential business model of
That's right.
selling only ideas and not execution of ideas. If they were more confident that their businesses would be as profitable as they want them to be by just focusing on the ideation, they would do it more often, in my opinion. It would just be in their self-interest to do so, but they aren't. And so maybe you were there, back in the day when you were an agency person, but talk a little bit about the mind shift change that you had to make to really own the value of the idea versus focusing on the value of control of the execution of the idea.
Well, look, you nailed it. It's the confidence that you can deliver, because what the agencies have a fail-safe. They got a parachute that they can rely on, which is, if I don't quite nail it on the concept side, I can make a concept better in execution. So it almost gives you two swings.
Mm,
So deliver it, but then I just know we've got a great director and we'll get a great production company, and we have great people on staff that are great at craft. And we always had that. You get to this moment at an agency where you go, the team that cracked the idea is great at big ideas, but they're not, I'm just making this up. They might not be the best at craft. But in the agency construct today, you can't. It's hard to rip that out from under them and say, you're the idea people. That team over there is better at craft. So I'm going to take this from you and I'm going to give it to them to craft it. Because that would create a morale issue, and you'd lose a lot of good talent, because if they birth the idea, they feel like they have to go make it. I always thought that was an issue in the model of like, but are they really the right people to go make it just because it's theirs? And that model's not right. So I always found that to be a problem. And I wanted to create something that opened up the opportunity where we could make different choices, again, separate vision and execution. So you have to have the confidence in, I can deliver upfront, and know that gives you the flexibility if you ever come back to the execution, that you could staff it differently. And you have to have people set up for both of those.
right.
And that's the way we built our staffing model. And our experts are both, we've got folks that are good at the idea, good at rounding out the idea and like how does it like come to life through every channel. And then if we have to go make it, who are the crafts people to go make it? So you have to set up your team that way. And I think that's really important. You also have to have you have to believe that the value is upfront. Some people, I think some agencies will go, no, I disagree. The value is in like the end output. And in the end, that's the thing you got to stand up for. And that's the thing that's going to drive the business. And I don't think the value is up. It's a cross. I just always believed, I mean, not always, but as I got more senior, I went, that's the magic. The magic is unlocking from an insight, cultural, consumer, what an answer can be, strategic or creatively. And I would say to agencies, if you believe that, then build your model that way. And in doing so, then the confidence you talked about, walking into a client's office room, new business pitch and say, I'm not giving it away for free because that's the thing. That is the bit that I want to monetize. And then go monetize it. Create a model that's easy for clients to understand the difference in value and what I get and how I engage with you. And if you can make that really clear, which I believe we've done, it gives you and the client confidence to go, I know how to shop. I know how to buy your products. I know what I'm going to get. I know what it's worth. And what I would suggest agencies to do is more of that, like commoditize and productize. And I think that's been really challenging for agencies to do historically.
Do you feel like this needs to be a binary choice up front for an agency, or do you feel like agencies who are still relying on the revenue they receive from execution can start to experiment with productizing their ideation while they're still running their legacy models? Because I feel like that's another part of the puzzle for a lot of small and mid-sized agencies, as well as, stopping and starting on day 30 and then day one from this is how we model our agency's business to now this is how we model our agency's business is, got to be intimidating.
I completely agree. And I'm sure it's probably impossible. Well, I shouldn't say that. Nothing's impossible. It's probably very hard to
Yeah.
turn off one spigot and turn on the other one when no one's ready to drink from that yet, or not a lot of clients are. And I'm sure that feels like a death knell to an agency and their business. So I think the hybrid model is for an agency, small or large, that has been operating for long or longer and has an established, there's an established business model in clients' mind of what I'm going to get from that company, entity, or agency. I think the hybrid is better. And, I wrote a couple of pieces, but one I forgot where it went, but, to try to give advice to agencies on how to do it. And I think that is to set up a group and a team of senior experienced leaders that aren't firmly tied to business, that can step into a challenge and solve it quickly at a high, vision, what I always call creative and strategic vision setting.
Right.
And they are a freelance group that moves from opportunity to opportunity, whether that's a new business opportunity or an existing client where they can step out. They are experienced and have the wisdom and gut and taste level to deliver answers quickly and
Mhm.
build a team like that. That is a SWAT team. I mean, that's what we kind of call ourselves. We're a SWAT team of right now 105 exceptional, unique, and diverse thinkers where we're going to put the right 3 to 5, 10, depends on the brief, on any given project. And they're going to galvanize around it. Sometimes they're working independently. Sometimes they're working as a co-op and together to solve problems incredibly quickly. And I think agencies can do that. It doesn't mean you have to hire 10 new people. It might be you just got to release the reliance of their time against specific clients in total versus make them, freelance experts to solve challenges very quickly when they come up with existing and new clients.
Right. How did you start to develop your ideas when you were launching X and O about how to price this, how to adequately express value vis-a-vis pricing to your prospective clients? I think agencies have more track record for good or for bad, depending on their margins on any given month, but they have more track record of how they're going to price what they're going to do. It's going to include some ideation, which they're probably going to give away or discount severely. And then
Yep.
it's going to be, let's talk about, what our blended rates are or what our flat project fees are going to be. How did you, when you started this concept of, no, we're only going to be about selling the idea, putting together the team that creates the idea, and then we're
Yep.
going to turn it over to whomever you want us to turn it over to actually bring to life. And here's the value of that. And so this is your how did you develop your thinking about how to do
Yeah. One, experience in historical context, which is I've written more scopes in my career than I'd like to admit.
Yeah.
So I have a pretty good sense of what things would cost within a bigger agency of a team. And then you can start to go, well, if we have no layers and we have no employees and it's only concentrated time and thinking from experts in a short sprint, you could reduce that by a third or a fifth, which
Mhm.
is kind of where we started. And then we just did you also do it based on, even at agencies like my last one where we didn't price based on people. You still do a rough breakdown. Like, what are we delivering? Who do we think needs to help deliver that? And then you model that out and you go, well, based on our operating costs, what are our operating costs? And then you go, when you add a bit of a margin for the company, what does
Right.
that get you to? And we modeled, our smalls are usually a 7-day sprint. So it's a week to a week and a half. Well, how many people do we roughly need on smalls? How much engagement and time from, what are we going to pay those experts to get to the answers? And then you can model out, well, those are roughly 50 to 100. And then you go a medium, which is going to be more like a month. And you're going to need more engagement, a bit more expertise from people from strategy and creative, depending on the ask. And that's going to be more like a 150 to 225. And
Mhm.
then you can do a large as a multi-tiered, more time, different expertise coming in and out across different disciplines. And that's at a different rate. And those are usually like 250 to 300K plus. So it was fairly easy to do. Some of that, again, I have the experience of having written them over and over again. And, we debated, as you can imagine, like how transparent are we about our pricing? And in the beginning, we didn't do a whole lot of press in the first year. And that was purposeful. One was we just want to prove the model out to ourselves. So we
Right.
were not I jokingly said, Banker and Siegel, we didn't make an agency called Beagle and put our names on the front because it's not about us. It's about our experts and officers. And we didn't go, hey, Beagle open today, like most other agencies do. It's the shiny names on the marquee.
Right.
Look at us. We've been in the business 25 years. It's now these two people, fancy names, and we're now in business. That wasn't what we were going to do. It was, no, let's go put the model to work because it's a totally different business model. And shame on us if we screamed the doors are open on day one without having the confidence to tell a client, here are 20 projects we did to prove out how
Yeah.
it works and why it works and the value to the business. So we spent a year doing that. And that allowed us to, I'd be lying if I said our pricing was solidified on day one. It was no, let's go through some projects. I mean, I think the first project we did though was a medium 150K, smaller medium. And it was like, so we had our pricing right in the beginning, but we really modeled it out. And, just like any statistics class you take, you're not confident until you have the confidence of some
Right.
law of averages. And you go, well, how many have we done? Where was the pricing right? Where did we underprice? Where did we overprice? And then you just learn over time. We're only a year and a half to 2 years in, but we're about 40, almost 40 projects in now. That's a lot of projects in a year and a
Yeah. A
half.
lot of data.
And it's a lot of data. So now we feel really confident and so confident that on this podcast, I'm talking about our pricing. We just did two interviews, one with Forbes and one with another. And I think it was Ad Age or one of the industry pubs where we just, yeah, it was Lindsay Rittenhouse from Ad Age, where we just went, no, here's our pricing. And, it was a little nerve wracking
Yeah.
to just put your pricing out to the world. But you're like, no, what clients want is that kind of transparency. I mean, we do say if there's ever any client procurement people that listen to this podcast, they may not agree, but we like to say we're a procurement's team dream. We're their dream because there's not a whole lot of negotiation. It's like, this is the time, this is who you're going to get, this is how quickly we're going to deliver, this is what we're delivering, this is what it costs. And there's flexibility in there, but it's not that drawn out agency negotiation where you're looking at I don't know if do you need 20 people on this, or can you do it with 17? Can you lower the scope and deliver less, or with less people? Can you do it in more time, less time? It's like, no, it's pretty well defined.
Well, you're either a dream or you're their nightmare because
Yeah, right, right.
they're not really able to check off all their little boxes that they need and like to check off to discharge
You're absolutely right. And I will,
responsibilities.
yeah, I will tell you one of my concerns coming in, but it's never happened. 35 projects, not one client has said to us, knock on, you can knock on wood for me too, because I hope this doesn't change the tide. But
Got
not
it.
one client's ever said to me, can you model that out with the people and the day rates? Like, what are their rates and what's your blended? No one's asked, which I thought would happen more often. And I'm glad it hasn't, because like, one, our people are anonymous. We're not going to tell, like, we don't, it's not about the people. It's about the value of the output. And I
Yeah.
think the reason for that is most people are going, wait a minute, you're going to deliver a big, positioning sharpening. I'm just giving you an example, and a
Yeah.
big creative platform. That's my next 5-year platform for how that platform comes to life through 5 channels as a creative toolkit that I can move into production with for $200,000. If you just compare that to what you pay an agency, it's not comparable. That's usually $1 million scope, or a half, that's a lot more money. So I think the reason why they're not asking is that they go, well, that's incredible value for what I'm getting on the other end. Um, and we've had no returns to date. So there's no clients going, well, what came out the other end was shit. So like, how do you stand behind that product? Because it's not. We have great people doing it. So I don't think they're asking because it's good value for what they would typically get from an agency. It's happening faster. They're getting expert level talent, where typically you're getting that plus mid and juniors on it. And you're getting top to top engagement. So you're never getting passed off or down to junior teams to deliver the work. So it seems like I hope for a lot of clients, a dream. I did another piece around smelting the iron triangle, which was, good or great, fast and inexpensive. Like that,
Mhm.
that's what clients have always, it's an economic principle that is supposed
Right.
to be not possible to achieve, right? You're only going to get 2 out of the
Two
3,
and three. Yeah.
right? And my belief is, no, you can get that. And this is a model that's hopefully starting to smelt that triangle a little bit and say it's possible to get all 3.
Right. Well, the value vis-a-vis the price tag is in the eye of the beholder, and that depends a lot upon
Yes.
the confidence level of who's selling to them and the track record of the individual that they're being pitched by. And I mean, let's be transparent, you had sterling credentials before you and your partner started, and I assume some established relationships that were helpful. I'm
Yeah.
making an assumption, but at the beginning of forming.
I say yes to the relationships. I don't have anywhere near the ego to say stellar relationship or stellar background, but
No, well, that's my word.
yeah, no, and I appreciate that, but I'm saying yes, but yes to, we have experience. We had the benefit of coming from great, big and medium sized and smaller
Right,
agencies that have done very well. I mean, agency of the year at Gray when we were there, Anomaly. I have such great reverence for my time there, and they did a lot right in terms of changing the way the business model worked,
right,
and putting more of the value on the output and thinking about IP differently. And they've they were born from those principles. So we pulled a lot from that, and we were able to make great relationships and get exposed to some really big blue chip clients and a way of working with great people that we
right.
took those relationships and ways of working with us over to almost 20 collective 50 years in the business.
Sure. I mean, that's organic for sure. And
Right.
I want to pull out a thread of something you said a couple minutes ago regarding the client conversations about the value and
Yeah.
take a different spin on that. And I'm wondering, as you were sort of debuting this new model, did you face any client conversations where the client was nervous or uncomfortable about how they were going to execute this? Were they satisfied to know that if they needed the execution, that's a bridge you would cross with them if they needed to? Or were most of them coming to the table pretty confident they had their own internal way of executing whatever you recommended or could build the team quickly to do it?
A very good question, and it's a mix. So you have with the rise of in-house models. We've done, some work with some, big blue chip beverage company that you could probably guess, and they have a massive studio that they've built. So we went into that relationship with a firm understanding that they have a big holding company relationship with agencies on tap that could take what we deliver in those 4 weeks and then go build on the concept creatively. And then they could take it into execution either with their studio or another agency. And then we have other clients that didn't have that. So we did an end-to-end with Alibaba.com, and that was made clear at the proposal stage. Like, we need you to create the concept, shoot and execute. And we did that in under 6 weeks, which is wild. And we knew that from the outset. So we were bringing in the right multi-hyphenates that could both, people, one of our lead thinkers on that, and was both a creative brain, a photographer, and a director. So you're just tapping into multi-hyphenates so you can, again, shorten the runway, both in time. But our whole thing, even when we're working in execution, is we want to work with shops that share our values and go, oh no, production doesn't need to cost $1 million. It doesn't need to take this much, 12 weeks to produce something. You could do it 2 or 3, and you could do it for a fraction of the cost. So we've worked with clients on both sides, and that's also the benefit of the model. And even on our creds, we show the spectrum. We're like, we can work any way. Like we always say, we're principle over process. So as long as we stick to the principles that we're going to move with pace, we're going to work top to top, and only with exceptional talent, hopefully on both sides, experienced talent on both sides. Then we'll bend the process. There's no IP in our process. Now you could say galvanizing around a problem quickly with only C-level talent and working top to top. There's not many models that do that. So yeah, is it proprietary? No. Is it unique? Yes. But we will bend our process. And if a client says, I want the experts to sit next to me in the process so they can't be anonymous, we'll do that. If that's truly beneficial to the output and the client engagement, we'll do it. We'll pull back the veil. Sometimes we might take it to deliver, we're in the process of an end-to-end Viz ID for a retail food chain, which was great. We went from like strategic territories in Viz ID to 3 different territories, pick one, go really deep, and then deliver the final brand book for the new logo, brand mark, graphics, video assets, how you shoot the product, how you shoot people,
Sounds fun.
and then actually this week was when it was the shoot. So we actually did the shoot for them. So that is one that we went into production with them because it was an intimate, great relationship. And when the work comes out, I'll be singing the praises of that client because they were wonderful. They were prepared to work in this new world that we're living in. Some agencies, some clients aren't. Some clients want, they have hierarchy and they have to work through that hierarchy, and they want to think about the different steps, and they want to make sure that each step's given the right amount of time. And we respect that. So, we joke around that, like, we have a slide or a page in our website that you may have seen that's like agency of record with a big red line through it.
I did see it.
And that's like that's like tongue in cheek. One, I don't ever want Anomaly to go away. They're great. They're a wonderful agency. My time spent there was incredible, and I have nothing but great reverence for them. But those models are particular and specific, and that model is quite different than the bigger agencies like an Ogilvy or a Gray or a McGarry. Like they're not going to go away. Some clients want end-to-end service, and they do want a team of 20, and they have a massive calendar of, I have 20 projects in my scope this year. That would be very hard for X&O to deliver all 20 of those. For clients of that size that want to work that way, they need agencies like that. But I think most clients would say there are definitely times where they step back and they look at that and they go, the model's bloated, it's inefficient, I'm wasting money, I'm paying for things I'm not sure I need. And I wish I could just get to big thinking quickly with great talent. And unfortunately, if you want to work with like that project I just mentioned, heads of design at companies and agencies to deliver a Viz ID, you're going to go to a branding shop, and that's going to be a 6-month process, and it's going to take probably 7 figures to do it. Yeah. Some clients want to work that way. Others, many are going, does it have to be that way? Does it really have to take that long? Do I really need that many people? Do I really need that much money to get to that kind of output and to get access to that kind of talent? This is an accessibility proposition that most clients didn't never had an option for. You
Right.
go, a lot of CMOs that were like, you know, S&P top 500 clients that like had massive budgets and they had the money to go work with blue chip agencies. And then they moved to a startup or an early tech company, and their
Yep.
budgets are a fraction of that. But does
Right.
that mean their ambition has changed? That they go, oh no, well now I got to work with a different tier of
And their
agents.
tastes certainly haven't changed.
Yeah, their taste hasn't changed. They want the same
Yeah.
output and IP from their agency partners on the other end, and they just don't have the same budget. So how do you service that client? It's with models like this.
Mhm. So I'm curious about um talent and what your talent access model has looked like, because one of the other things you're doing differently is you've sort of taken this collective approach to plucking C-level folks to work with you on a SWAT basis, depending on the project that you're working on at the time. And I think that would be a dream team approach for lots of agency owners to figure out how can we find the right people who have the right high level of skill, but who can just fly in and work strategically when we need them to. Because quite frankly, we're small and we
Yep.
cannot afford the load of having them on a full-time basis.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the advice to agencies. Before I mentioned building a team in-house, that could be financially challenging, right? Because you
Yeah.
have people that are available that don't have a large percentage of their salary paid for by clients if they're
Mhm.
truly freelance. The other way to do it is create a fractional faction, which they should be doing, which is again the rise of incredibly talented people that no longer are attached to holding company or a big agency that have said, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm now a free agent. I started my own little LLC, or maybe I started a little company, and I'm going to work on a project basis now, is through the roof. So that was one of the key insights to create X&O, which my partner Eric and I said, man, the talent pool is through the roof now. Those people are free agents. It's important to reassert we don't moonlight anybody. So if you have a job, you cannot be in our network. You have to be
Got it.
available, right? So that when you come on a project, that's how we can move fast, 100% focus. And if I were an agency, I'd create my fractional faction and go, here are 10 people that I'm going to have sign an IC contract that are available. Now you might call them and say, I have a project. It's a 1 week sprint. Are you available? And they're going to go, no, hopefully they're going, I got a project with X and O. I'm not available that week, but they're going to work on a fractional basis in quick sprints like this. And if I were an agency, I would create that faction and I'd start, one of our missions is to ring fence the top 1% of talent in marketing and communications.
Mhm.
That's a tough mission. So when you were starting this question, I'm going, talent is probably the thing that will continually keep me up at night in a good way, because that talent pool is always evolving. Imagine we just had two people that were former CCOs, some of the two best human beings and creative talent we had on our roster. They just took a full-time job with a new to market agency. They're now leading that creative department. They are now out of our network. That's a big loss for us. And when you have 105 people, and we're never going to grow to thousands. Well, maybe when we're really, as we continue to scale, we might be 500. But if we're going to be the top 1%, there aren't that many that you would say pass that bar. So we are always looking at talent because we're assessing who's on the roster. Are they really, really are they great at what they do? And we're trying to like really pinpoint their superpower. So one, I would tell agencies to lean into the fractional model more. And then two, for us, it's a constant pipeline. And it's hard. I'm frequently responding to people that are really good and telling them, you're not there yet. Sorry. And that you're probably great, but you don't have the experience yet. Or are you truly an expert at that thing at this moment in time? And if you're not, then we'll chat in a few years when you are. But we have to our bar for talent is incredibly high, because when you go experience, talent, and clear superpower, that's hard. It's hard to get to that.
It
And
is, especially, those that are interested in, just fractional
fractional
availability.
work too. Exactly. It's someone that's also confident enough in that ability to go, and their moment in their point in life. I have some that are in the network or I want to get in the network that, might be 18 years in their mid 30s, and they're just married with a child. And they're like, the idea of not having, benefits and a
Mm.
401k and a regular salary that gives me the confidence that I can provide for my family is, I get it. That's hard.
Right.
So all those factors make the talent side of this challenging, but also, like, honestly, one of the best parts of my job. Because when I worked at my previous agencies, was I having a conversation daily with new, fresh talent in the industry that I never met? No, I had 5 clients that I was driving and running a department of 80 people and on 2 new business pitches. So did I ever really put my head above the horizon line to say, oh, I should chat with Sharon? Did I have time to chat with Sharon? Not a chance. Did I have time to chat with this great business or organizational strategist that has just a unique brain that is going to teach me something or could bring value to my company? I just didn't have time for it. And
Right.
now that's I still don't have as much time as I would like, but the last 2 years I've been able to reconnect with and meet just exceptional talent. And that's invigorating when you get
Right.
put time towards that.
Well, and you're growing your inventory of ideas or potential ideas that way too, which is
Ideas, expertise, discipline,
yeah.
right? People will say to us like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, we can kind of do a lot. We can do anything. Like in this moment right now, we have built a new OGSM, like objective goals, strategies, measures for a new to market company, like organizational and business strategy. We just built the Viz ID for a company. We're doing an innovation strategy for another company.
Mhm.
We are doing a positioning and brand platform, creative platform. Those are all so different. And
Right.
each one of those, totally different expertise and talent, all different teams. And if the volume of each of those projects goes up in year 3 and 4 or 5 of the company, we got to be really deep in organizational strategy. We've got to be really deep in design and visual identity and design strategy. You got to be really deep in innovation, product development, innovation strategy. Like those are all different shops right now, right? If you're a
Right.
client, I'm going to make it up. You go to Red Scout for innovation. You go to Landor for packaging. You might go to another company for Viz ID and branding. You go to another company for creative activations, digital and real world activations. You go to another one for big creative platform. At X and O, we do all of it. We don't ever say we're a one-stop shop because we're not always on, but what we want is a client to come to us for all 5 of those
Yeah.
over the course of a year and a half.
Well, you're curating is what it sounds like to me. You're curating
Yeah,
the best teams or
best
you're
talent.
curating the best. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
and I wanted to ask about sort of agency to agency collaboration because I know we've talked about getting senior level thinkers, strategists, creatives to be part of your fractional talent pool. But how do you see the sort of the agency to agency ecosystem evolving? We've definitely seen at the firm a market increase over the last 2 years in agency to agency collaborations, where before used to see it used to be super tough to see that or to find agencies. If they collaborated, it was many times because the client would say, "Thou shalt work together, whether you like it or not, because we like you for this, we like you for that." But now it feels like agencies are, seeking out this sort of collaboration. So do you envision like strategically bringing, and I think maybe you said that you do a little bit of this, but do you see an increase in that down the horizon where you are sort of cherry picking your best in class, maybe unknown partner agencies to help with either portions of the sprints you're doing or with the execution of them?
Yeah, so we do spend a lot of time meeting with partners because uh, just like the business model surrounds the challenge and problem with the right expert talent to give you answers quickly, if and when a client comes back and says, do that next step or that execution, if it's beyond something we can do with a small expert team, we have a roster of partners, agencies, small, but it's really built on shared values. So we need those partners to operate with the same values that we have in the way that
Got
they
it.
look at IP, the lack of preciousness around the idea, the
Mm.
ability to move incredibly fast, to be lean and lacking hierarchy. And if they have that structure, we will. There are agencies we've met with, digital agencies where we build an idea and they want social on the back end, where we've met enough to go, hey, client, you should work with them. And then it's a pure, that's a good model for us in that we can partner with them up front so they know what we're making. And then on the back end, we get some passive income because it's a referral fee, right? And vice versa. I'm hoping that as we start giving more business to agencies like that, they're going to get calls where they go, man, that's out of our remit. Like, we don't do innovation strategy, but I know a shop that can get you that with great experts quickly. And that one of the early slides we built in our creds deck was this wonderful flywheel that this business model creates, both with agencies, but also our experts. We give experts jobs, and then they might have their own, we might give a CSO a job, and they have their own little LLC. It's them and by themselves or with one or two other people, and they help with positioning. But then they have another client where they cracked positioning, but that client now wants creative work. And we're hoping, we haven't gotten a lot of it yet from our experts, but they start feeding us jobs because they go, well, I helped with the thing I do, but now you can help them with the thing I don't do. So I do think, that agency flywheel can pick up some steam, and we're hoping to feed it. I mean, I think, something I was thinking about today, not even in advance of this podcast, but just something that is important, which is when you create something, you have to stay true and germane to the values. And I was thinking about it because for the first time in this short lifespan of X&O, we are not chasing growth. Growth is chasing us. And that's a good position to be in, right?
It is,
When
yeah.
and that might change tomorrow, by the way. So we're there in this
I'm
moment.
knocking on my chair again. I have
Knock on
found
your chair again.
one
But in
handle.
those moments you go, well, there's an inflection point, which is, and Eric and I have done this a few times, where we've been given an opportunity that's not true to the business model or the values of the company, but I like the client. I like the product, the service, the thing that we might help. I truly believe we can help build something for them that will grow the business. But if you chase it for that reason and for the money, it's for the wrong reason. And I think way too many agencies do that. And they start with a vision and a value system, and they can't turn away from the shiny object, which is either money. I like that client. I like the brand, the service, whatever it is. And then a year from now, they're looking back and going, this sucks. And I mean, just when I mean it sucks, it's we're doing something we're not fit to do. We're not staffed for it. Now we're overstaffed. Our margins have shrunk. Our operating costs are through the roof. The morale is low. All those things take hold. And we have been, I don't want to say wise enough, disciplined enough to anytime we face that going, that's not us. Because unsurprisingly, we could have taken on an AOR assignment with a client for a year or 6 months with all the things ticked off of love the client, like the brand, but that's not our business model. Right. That's not true to the values. And if you can make those decisions at every point, then growth will chase you, because you're not taking on you're not looking to be something that you're not. And you'll find that people go, oh, I get what you are, and I want more of that. And clients go, it's clear, proposition's clear, don't change it. And if you can stay true to it, I think you can grow pretty quickly.
And I think you're right that is such a discipline thing. It's
discipline.
It's not even, doesn't even come down to, you've already established your core values. The discipline part is not turning away the bad things or the things that are obviously shiny, but turning away the things that happen to be shiny, but are also good and cool and in the short term, potentially lucrative. But that is hard to do. It's hard for any agency to do. But yeah.
And the other thing is, like, if I don't know if you saw the panel I spoke on, but at the small agency conference, but man, I will, it's one of my life's journey, or at least career journey and goal, to lead the movement to stop pitching. And I know that's going to be really hard, but I'm going to be screaming it for years and years to come, because so wrong. And I know as an IP lawyer, you must sit back and go, why are you giving it away?
I
And
I
and
can't I can't
yep,
stand it, but I also have to
you have to understand it. You empathize, right? You just go,
I
how
do. I've made my peace with it as a part of the business that, um, it's a business decision that agency owners make for their own reasons, and we just try to meet them where they are, but yeah,
yeah, we meet, but I will say to those listening on the agency side, and if you're fairly new or you're starting your own, you'd be surprised how many clients have said to me, "Oh, it's totally effed. That's wrong. I know it's wrong. I don't even think we should do it." But if five agencies are going to be willing to walk through the door and give me stuff for free,
yeah,
who's going to say no to that? But the
yep,
minute agencies band together and say, we can't do this anymore, guys, I'm sorry.
yeah,
I think agencies would be quite surprised at how many clients would go, it's about time, you're right. Like we've been
yeah,
fleecing you for quite some time. And
right,
that is not the right value proposition. I posted something a month or two ago about it's like walking into five barbershops and going, can you give me a haircut for free? And I'm
yep,
going to do that for 5 months. I'm going to get five haircuts and then I'll
yep,
come back and maybe pay one of you. Like
right,
not one barber would say sit in the chair. They
right.
tell you to, go pound
I'm
sand.
gonna write 4 MSAs for you,
Yeah,
and you can pay me for the 5th one. Yeah,
exactly. It's
the
ju-
same thing.
it's insanity. So I am, I've got to find a way to get the right megaphone, and then it's talking about it on podcasts like yours is the right place to start. To just get, and there's, maybe it's getting agencies and small agencies together to say, let's try different models. It doesn't have to be, I'm not going to pitch, but how do we have more paid pitches? How do you,
Yeah,
and X and O won't probably ever, be a part of those, but let's start just to shift the value equation to at least
yeah,
start. Yeah, you've got to create some semblance of acceptance from the clients that it's not right. And that there's got to be some pay and value exchange for what's delivered in those moments.
right. Yeah, I mean, know your value, know your worth. That's what it comes down to me.
Right.
I'm really glad that you said that and you raised that as a thought leadership point because um it's really in alignment with why I think you're seeing success with your model because you are you're going all in on the value of the creativity and the ideation that you're bringing to the table
Hmm.
and totally divorcing it from, you know, unless the client wants something else, totally divorcing it from what happens after you've developed it, thought hard about it, and presented it to them so they can then make the decision about what they want to do with it.
That's right. And it's divorced, but with a line of sight towards what that could be. So that,
Yes.
because the question you asked earlier was well asked, and it's the right point, which is have clients walked into this going, I'm nervous because I'm blind to what to do next and what do I do?
Yeah.
And we try to provide that line of sight. This is what we're going to do, by when, with whom, delivering this. And then look, this is a proper next step. And that could be with this partner or with us or with it. So they at least know they have some line of sight to what that could look like,
Right.
engagement could look like with
Right.
X and O or with their in-house team or another partner. Because you don't want them, that would create some trepidation if it was truly blind. I think clients would be really nervous to go, well, you're not telling me how I navigate step 2, 3, and 4. We have that chat up front so that they understand what the avenues could be they can take with it
Right.
after.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I have really enjoyed your insights, and I am always happy to talk to a kindred spirit when it comes to agencies protecting their ideas and protecting their intellectual capital and knowing their worth. And so, Brett Banker from X and O, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise. And where can agency leaders and owners find out about what X and O does and learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for taking the time. I never looked at the clock, so that tells you how engaging and how much fun I had uh,
Uh,
talking
Me
about the
too.
business model and compensation. And it's important. I think we're at it really is a massive seismic shift in what's happening in the industry, and these conversations have to be happening more often. And I appreciate you creating a platform for agencies and clients to understand different ways for it to be done. For any agencies that want, or clients that want to talk, heyxo.co is our site. You can reach out to us there. I am much more active on LinkedIn than I ever have been, which is part of the job now. You can certainly find me there. And I ran account management departments for years, and I think the not just the leadership side, but the sharing knowledge and knowledge transfer and learning from each other and helping those that are trying to do something different has always been a big part of my personal DNA. Like I like to learn, and I like to share what I've learned. Those that protect that, I think it's unfair to those that want to grow and get to a different place after us. So I'm always happy to talk to agencies that are trying to do things differently, or those that want to create their own. And of course, any clients that think that we might be a good partner for them in the future, our door is always open.
Awesome. Brett, thank you so much. Really enjoyed our conversation today. And thank you, the rest of you, for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And we will see you on the next episode. Stay well until then.
Cheers.